Hey guys, what's going on? Sorry I couldn't be there today, but I did want us to kind of start looking forward. So, as you guys know, because I'm not here today, we won't present our bills to our floor, which for some of us gives us a few extra days to get that done. We'll do that on Thursday because that's the next time that I know I will be there for sure. Now, what I want us to start doing is I want us to start kind of refreshing a little bit about what Article 2 says in our Constitution and the executive branch that it creates. Now, as we start to do this, the ultimate goal is for us to select candidates for president and run for president in our classroom. You know, we have our political parties, we have our Republicans and our Democrats already set. So what we'll then start to do is we'll then start to go forth and explore what it would be to actually be in our classes. All right. So here we are talking about the Constitution. Here we are talking about Article 2. And what we're going to do is we're just going to simply explore what Article 2 does. All right. Now, with this, we're going to be taking some notes, and I'll make sure that you guys have the notes sheets there. Now, what I'm going to do is going to invite you guys to kind of direct it so that things are paused at certain times. That will be of assistance to you guys in making sure that you have everything down. All right. So as we kind of look at this and as we kind of get going on this, I want to make sure that you guys are aware of kind of our schedule this week. So we're in the classroom today, obviously. We're in the classroom tomorrow. We're in the classroom Thursday for presentations, and we're in the classroom Friday. Hopefully we'll be starting our presidential campaign on Friday and be going through our nomination process. All right, so with that, here we go. All right, a couple reminders. I'm willing to accept your missing work. I'm not available at lunch these next couple days, but I do need to see some people in at lunch to get some things kind of squared away. Our presentations are going to be Thursday, and I will be back in the classroom on Thursday. All right, so the Constitution of the United States, again, we talk about the organization, we talk about the preamble. It's the introduction to that document, right? And I want us to keep kind of remembering what the preamble is and that it's the introduction, right? So when we talk about a preamble, we're talking about just basically why we created the Constitution. Next, we have Article 1. Article 1 is what we just finished. It establishes the legislative branch, and it includes the amount of power that legislators have. So what we just did in creating a laws was practicing Article 1 and what Article 1 does for those senators and those representatives. Next, we're going to talk about Article 2. Article 2 just establishes the executive branch. It includes the name President as the Supreme Executive Branch leader, incorporates the enforcement of laws into its duty. Now, when I say it includes the name President, I want to be very clear with that, right? We just fought a war less than 20 years earlier to get rid of a tyrannical king, right? And we needed a head of our government. And king was the most common around the world. Like, most common around the world. Everyone had a king, all right? But what we decided to do was not name them a king. And the reason that helped, right? The reason that we saw that was because when we talk about not having a king, right? We needed a name that would still kind of be a presence, but not necessarily call it a king. And we wanted to make sure that we never called it a king. Calling it a king would kind of resort back to the old ways of being under King George and the rule of England, and we did not want to see that happening anymore. So Article 2, again, here's your first note, and you guys will see that the notes are kind of laid out. You know, Article 2, there's a long box for you to copy that down, and that's what you guys will be doing with this. But Article 2 just basically establishes the executive branch of the government. It includes the name president, like what we just read, right? So Article 2 is what establishes it. It makes it so that it can exist, just like Article 1 establishes the legislative branch, and Article 3 is going to establish our judicial branch. The executive power lies in the hands of the President of the United States, frequently abbreviated POTUS or POTUS. In the newspaper, on Twitter, anywhere, guys, you might see a lot of POTUS because it's a lot shorter. Also, his wife goes by Flois, FLOTUS, First Lady of the United States, FLOTUS. All right, and that's kind of there for us to kind of be there. So our president is elected, and now they get to select their vice president. At the beginning of our country's history, their vice president was the person that finished second in this general election. So you would see presidents and vice presidents of different parties, and it was very, very difficult to accomplish a lot of things. In order to be president, you must be at least 35 years old, a natural-born citizen, and have resided in the United States for the last 14 years. All right, so at least 35 years old, right? At that time, that was an age of an extreme wisdom, right? You're talking about a life expectancy of 65. So you at this point had basically lived just more than half of your life, and you were extremely smart. You probably started working or started really seriously schooling at 14 and had held a job from about 20 to 35 where you were getting a lot of experience. All right, and that's kind of really what it meant there. Now, another key word there is natural born citizen. Natural born citizen has not actually ever been defined. What does it mean to be a natural born citizen? Is that a citizen born within the United States? Is that a citizen that's born to American parents around the world? Is that a citizen that, is, given a right to United States citizenship at birth? So when we talk about that, right, what we talk about is we're kind of looking at that. And it's a really important thing because if you guys remember, in 2008, we saw quite a bit of controversy surrounding Barack Obama's birthplace. Well, his mother was American. So he was, by definition, as defined in 2011, that basically says the Constitution doesn't say anything about this, but we interpret it as someone that's guaranteed citizenship at birth. He was fine regardless of where he was born. And we had that whole push that, Obama wasn't born in Hawaii, he was born in Kenya. So you saw that whole thing. Now, when we talk about the 2016 race, right, we're talking about Ted Cruz, who was born in Canada, in Calgary. And what the definition now provides is that because he was born to an American mother, that he was a natural born citizen as well. And that's what you start to kind of see happening is we've kind of started to define this as somebody born into citizenship regardless of location. All right, and another example would be John McCain, who was born in Panama Canal Zone, which is not part of the United States. You must take an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States. That's a must. That's kind of really that swearing-in ceremony in 2008. In early 2009 when Obama was sworn in. He basically had the largest crowd ever at that swearing-in ceremony, even though that was just kind of fake because they did it for real beforehand. Anyways, it doesn't matter. They must defend and protect it. They can be impeached for treason, misdemeanors, and other high crimes. As for impeachments, we've never actually seen, we've seen an impeachment, but we've never seen the way that goes is the House is in charge of bringing forth the impeachment, and the Senate, with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, is in charge of hearing the case against and deciding. We've seen presidents impeached, the most recent being President Bill Clinton, whose wife is running for office in 2016. He was impeached by the House, but in the Senate, they didn't have the votes to overturn it, so we didn't worry. Prior to that, we saw Richard Nixon, who ended up resigning before the impeachment could actually happen. And that's a lot of reason and speculation as to why he did resign. All right, the powers, all right, Commander-in-Chief of the military. That's what the president is. President commands the military. He is the supreme leader of the military. He has the power to pardon or forgive people. All right, so he can say, well, you committed this crime, but we forgive you as the United States. All right, he can create treaties if the Senate agrees with him. All right, and that's an important part when we talk about checks and balances, which we'll look at again tomorrow. There's a lot of checks and balances on the President of the United States so that we don't see a tyrannical king. Again, back to that whole why do we call it a president, not a king. The president has the power to nominate and appoint the following positions, like judges. All right, federal judges are appointed by the president of the United States. Ambassadors are also appointed by the president of the United States. Department heads within his cabinet are appointed but must be approved as well. And the president has the power to enforce laws. Every year, in a joint session of Congress, the president is expected to give a State of the Union address, right? And we just saw that in January, where President Obama was with Congress, in front of Congress, talking about the State of the Union and things that he wanted to do, right? And we go back to the Constitution, and the early part of it is that the executive power must provide the legislative power, basically, an understanding of where things are and how things are going. And that's exactly what he had to do in that. All right, so we do see a State of the Union usually every January or early February. All right, so brief history of the executive branch. The executive branch has had 44 presidents, but only 43 different men have been presidents. And I feel comfortable with men right now because we have not elected a female president. All right, 2016, I know that we have one female president running on a major ticket, and that is going to be, if Hillary Clinton can win the nomination, be the first president on a major ticket that's running for office. We have seen female vice presidents, including 1984. We had a female vice president running. But what we will definitely see is that we'll see that. So only 43 men, and only 43 men have filled 44 positions because Grover Cleveland served 2 non-consecutive terms, making him the 22nd and 24th president of the United States. Benjamin Harrison broke up his 2 terms for 4 years. So he had won an election, lost an election, and then won an election again, which made him the 22nd and 24th president, which is why we only have 43, which is kind of a good, fun tidbit to know about presidents. All right, here's some other presidential milestones to kind of finish us out today. Our first president was George Washington. He's on our $1 bill and on our quarter. Hopefully you guys knew that and knew that he was our first president. So he was really kind of the one that kind of got it started. And he set a lot of precedent in his action, including, the State of the Union. He was writing letters at that time. It was an appearance in public TV event. 2 terms. He retired after 2 terms, which would be followed up until, you get the first Roosevelt, who ran for 3 terms, and then you get the second Roosevelt, who actually won 4 elections to be president, only served 3 terms in a few days. All right. So you do see that taking place there. So Washington would set tremendous amount of precedent for that position, including his farewell address, which became a pretty popular thing as well. All right. Now, the first to die in office was William Henry Harrison of Indiana. He's Indiana's only president so far. We may see another one. It's always a possibility. But William Henry Harrison also is the president that served the shortest amount of time, because he passed away just 41 days into his presidency because he wanted to give a big, long speech at his inauguration. And when he was doing that, it was raining, drizzly, and cold in March, and he did not wear a coat. He caught a wicked cold and passed away. All right, so basically, he was the first president to die in office. Our first assassinated president was Abraham Lincoln, and that anniversary was just last week, as we kind of talked about briefly. So Abraham Lincoln was our first one, assassinated 1865. John Wilkes Booth, a Southern sympathizer, following the Civil War, decided with a few friends to carry out 3 well-timed attacks on the Union's 3 highest leaders, including President Abraham Lincoln and Secretary of State William Seward. All right, and what happened was we started to kind of see that taking place. Lincoln would die ultimately on April 15th in the early morning hours, but he was shot the night of April 14th, which was Good Friday in 1865, right before Easter Sunday. And he ultimately would become a legendary president for that and for the actions that he started but did not get to fulfill. So he oversaw the Civil War. All right, the Civil War started just after his inauguration. All right, and then what happened is he kind of fought and managed that Civil War and the fractured United States, and he's kind of a one of the more popular presidents for those actions. And then ultimately, his ideas became the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, outlawing slavery, giving equal protection to all races, and different things such as that. Our longest serving president was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt served from 1932 until his death in office in 1944. During that time, he had won 4 elections as president of the United States. He won the 32, 36, 40, 44, and passed away shortly after his inauguration for his 4th term. The longest serving president after that, we put into the Constitution that a president can only serve 2 consecutive terms that he won, in 2 years of a second or earlier term. So whatever that could be. So like if he was 10 years, is basically about the max that you can serve. So Franklin Roosevelt was the longest serving president. He's a second cousin to Teddy Roosevelt, one of the more famous presidents. Franklin Roosevelt would oversee the United States through the Great Depression and the beginning of the Second World War. Our first non-Protestant, every president up to this point had been basically a Protestant president, somebody that came from a offshoot of Catholicism, based back in Martin Luther's 95 Theses. He started to kind of see, that. So our first non-Protestant president was John F. Kennedy, who was actually a Catholic from Boston. And he was elected in 1960 and oversaw the Cuban Missile Crisis. Ultimately would be another assassinated president on November 22nd, 1963, when Lee Harvey Oswald took his life while he was riding in his motorcade in Dallas, Texas. And our first non-white president is our current president, who is Barack Obama. Barack Obama had a white mother, a black father, and he is of a mixed race. So he is our first non-white president, first African-American president, and that's kind of there. So with that, hopefully we got these notes down. There's one more question I need you guys to answer today. Let's get that answered. Let's get those turned into the bin, and let's make sure that we come back tomorrow ready to take a look at some checks and balances. All right? Hopefully this helps. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. See you guys on Thursday. Be ready to present.